Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ideanthro. Now this is the second of our two videos looking at the concept of ZAM WSUD. So this is zero additional maintenance water sensitive urban design. And this is a concept from Manningham City Council in Melbourne, Victoria, where effectively they are trying to find ways to implement stormwater treatment systems, specifically bioretention systems, in a manner that means they don't require any more maintenance than what that piece of land would have needed anyway. And so I'm down here for a week or so. I used the opportunity to catch up with Simon Brink from Manningham City Council, and he was super generous with his time showing me around some of their stuff, and I'm really grateful for that. Simon, thank you. Simon showed me around some of these assets, and so this is the second of two videos looking at some of the stuff that Simon was able to show me and sharing with you some thoughts that I have about it. Now, there is a manual for this sort of thing that's been published by Manningham City Council and the CRC for Water Sensitive Cities. If you go to the CRC for Water Sensitive Cities website, I think it's the technical documents, technical guidelines section. You should be able to find that. So these videos are really about more my observations and interesting things that I saw while looking at these systems. In the first video, we looked at a system on the side of a street, had turf in it because there would have been turf there anyway, and we looked at some of the other features of it. Today, we are looking at a system that is meant to replace some landscaping that would have occurred anyway. So this is on a street corner. There are some shops over kind of behind this fence here. There are some shops there, and so there's going to be some landscaping here anyway. So this was an attempt to create a water sensitive feature that also performed a landscaping function. So in this instance, it was okay for them to, by their rules of having no additional maintenance burden, it was okay for them to plant it out with these grasses and sedges, because there would have already been some maintenance happening to the vegetation on this corner had they just landscaped it normally. So in this instance, that was okay. That still counts as zero additional maintenance. There's a few things I'd like to point out here. Once again, this concept of these scalloped out depressions here for capturing sediment. I think if we have a look at these other ones around here, this is an example of how this is intended to work. So you can see here, as the water flows down, it's intending to pick up the little bits of sediment like so, and then the street sweeper can come along and pick that up. So I wanted to show you that. But what I'm going to focus in on here is this is a really good example, because obviously there's no turf on top, so you can see it, of this coarse sand that they've lain on the surface of the system. So when I was here earlier, I had a bit of a dig into the system, like so. And so you can see there's this really coarse stuff sitting on the top of the system here. Now, presumably, if I dig down deep enough, eventually I hit some filter media. Although, let's be honest, I am getting pretty deep without finding anything that looks like filter media there. You can see what's going on the surface there. Simon told me that in future ones they've reduced the depth. So this, oops, my wireless microphone just got hooked on a plant, nearly pulled it off me. Simon was telling me that in some of the original ones, like these ones, the intent was to have 100 mils of coarse sand on the surface, but they've since reduced that to 50, and obviously there's a fair bit of coarse sand on the surface of this system. But something that I found really interesting was that when we turned up before, there were essentially no weeds in this system, except around the inlets here. And so I'm not, this is the first time that I've physically seen a system with this coarse sand used on the surface. So I can see the potential. And a quick reminder, in case you haven't seen video 1, which of course you should go and watch, in case you haven't seen video 1, the purpose of the coarse sand is that in Victoria they had seen some systems where fine sediment had come in onto the surface of the systems, had begun to clog up the surface, and that had caused the systems to clog. And the idea with the coarse sand is because it's really open in its nature. What's that, sorry? Oh, you'd like to kind of see a bench or a tree for some... Yeah. Yep, no worries. Sorry, quick chat with a resident there. She was saying that she would love to be able to use this this corner with a nice tree and a seat for some shade and some seating. Cool, that's good feedback. I love it when people come up to me when I'm out and about. That's the first time it's happened while I've been filming, but I love it when people come up and about and have a chat. Anyway, so the purpose of the coarse sand was was so that if fine sediment came in, that coarse sand is really open, so the fines can kind of settle in through that first 100 mils or so, aren't going to clog it up. It's still going to be able to drain for a while, and eventually it's going to turn more back into kind of a sandy, loamy mix, but it's meant to kind of future-proof some clogging in the system. So, but going back to what we saw here, we came out and the system itself was fairly free of weeds, except around the inlets here, where you can also see some fine sediment coming in. Now, I've seen before on bioretention systems that weeds often enter the system through the inlet because they're coming in the stormwater. But what I found really interesting here was the fact that they were only propagating where that fine sediment was deposited. And as I said before, I'm not entirely sold on this coarse sand on the surface thing, but this got me thinking, right? Because I was like, oh, it's entirely possible that weed seeds have come into this system through the inlet, come in, they might even be spread throughout the entire system, but they're only able to propagate where there's this fine sediment. The coarse sand might actually be making these systems a little bit resilient to weed ingress. That really intrigues me. We need to do a little bit, and the thought there would be that in the front of the system where the silt is, it's retaining the water enough that the weeds, the seed is able to get some water, it's able to germinate, able to get its roots down, able to get established. But hypothesizing, and I have no idea whether this is actually true, but hypothetically, in the sandy area, it's just so free draining that even if a weed seed settles on it, it just can't get going, can't establish. There's like a couple of little bits on this system, but there's really nothing. So I can see some potential there. I'm not sold on it. I'm not saying we should do it. I'm not doing any of that. I'm just, my brain's processing this exactly as we speak. And we saw this at each of these two inlets. So there was one there, sorry, shadow in the way, there was that one there. Same thing happened over here. You can see the weeds that Simon pulled out over here. And it really got me thinking. And that's really what I wanted to show you with this system here, is the concept. So you can have a think about it. You can see whether you, sorry, spinning this back around, whether you think it's a good idea, because that's how we learn, right? We try things out, we look at what happens, we observe what happens, because then you get ideas and you go, okay, maybe we can use that in that way or that way. Maybe it's not perfect like this, but if we do that instead, and eventually we get to a really workable answer. And that's what I love that Manningham is doing here, is that they are trying something. I don't know if this is perfect. I've got some reservations. I've talked to other people who have some reservations, but what I love, what I absolutely love, is the fact that they are trying, and the fact that they are doing it completely open source. They're sharing all this knowledge, they're sharing all this info, so that other people, can learn from it, can take what they want. You can learn from this, right? And that's it. I think it's brilliant. So look, that's it for this episode of Ideanthro. Before we go, another big thanks to Simon from Manningham for showing me around. I really appreciate it, mate. Thank you. And if you'd like to know more about what it is that we do at Ideanthro, you can find us online at ideanthro.com. But even more importantly, if you've got a comment about one of these videos, you've got a question, you want to know something about water-sensitive urban design or stormwater treatment, by all means, comment on the video. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, comment on the video. We'll look into it, we'll make a video for you. Or you can send us an email, you can go to the webpage, you can find all our contact details on the Connect page. And that's it for now. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.